small business owners, entrepreneurs, and side hustlers everywhere. Welcome to today's episode where we have a special guest for you. Scot Ulmer is an entrepreneur who founded a special company called Little Pink Houses. He's been an entrepreneur for several years. He's been a real estate investor, and he's part of kind of a pretty elite real estate investment network that we're a part of and fortunate to work in and serve. And Scot, as we begin this podcast, I'd love to just kind of tell the audience, if you would, a little bit about your background and maybe some of the key events that led you to become an entrepreneur and also to launch Little Pink Houses.
There are over 32 million businesses in the U.S., and over 90% of them will never break seven figures in annual sales. So how do we as entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs break into that seven figures club? This podcast will relentlessly share the secrets, strategies, and tactics I've used to create 3 multi-seven figures businesses and bring in even more successful entrepreneurs than me to share their inspirational stories and tactics to success. You can create your dream business and life right now. So buckle up and let's go.
Absolutely. Well, Leo, thank you for having me. It's an honor and a privilege. And yeah, we are part of a really neat community. I feel certainly honored to be a part of that. And I have been an entrepreneur, I guess, essentially most of my life. My story is it starts at 14 years old. I was mowing lawns and had saved some money up. My father had actually read a book, believe it or not. In fact, I don't even know if you'd remember this, Leo, How to Awaken the Financial Genius Inside of You by Mark Harrelson. Do you remember that book from the, I want to say 70s, maybe 80s? It was a little before our time, but my father read a book and learned how to wholesale houses, and that kind of got his start. So at 14, I had some money saved up, and as I've told the story many times, I had a lot of help, but I bought my first house at 14. It was a tax lien property, and of course, my dad's attorney. Wow. And my dad, a lot of help, but ultimately I paid for it and flipped it wholesale. That made about sold it for $4,200. So made a nice little chunk. Of course, at 14 years old, that was all the money in the world. And
a lot of money when you're 14.
Oh man, I was big time, man. I was big time back then. So, but it was just my foray, if you will, into real estate and entrepreneurship as a whole, and loved it at the time. Loved the feeling I had, and wanted to replicate that. And so I really got my start early. What's funny is when I started kind of getting out there over the past 10 years or so, I thought it would be neat to share a picture of my first home. So, here's my first house I bought at 14. So I go to pull it up on the street view. And of course, it's a parking lot at this point. It wasn't real special back then. And they not for development, but because it was not worth keeping, evidently. So, but that's how I got my start. And so kind of fast forward the tape, I didn't want to go to college, but parents made me graduate, which I'm very happy that I did that. I went to Ohio University, played a little football, and as I've shared,
very nice.
Yeah, NFL called me, said, "Don't waste your time. You're not fooling us." And so it was a pretty short-lived college career, but graduated early and then started working for my father right out of school. And Leo had kind of an interesting niche of real estate that he had specialized in. He would buy many for cash. We did a lot of creative stuff as well, but we would renovate them. How we sold them was what was unique. We would sell them on what was called a land installment contract, which is essentially an installment sale where you're agreeing to receive payments toward the purchase of the property from a buyer that was essentially pre-qualified, but not eligible for a traditional or institutional mortgage. And so there's a lot of folks that fit that mold out there. The difference with my dad's company is that he took a lot of time qualifying the buyer up front to making sure that they were able to get a loan at some point in the foreseeable future. And the strategy was to sell it on terms to a buyer that needed maybe a year or two, really with the intent to get them mortgage ready, credit qualified in that window of time, roll them over, take the profit, go to the next deal, and so on and so forth. And so it got to be a niche at that point. We were doing about 150 of those a year. These aren't assignments where you're tying them up and assigning them out. We're paying cash for these. And we had about 6 full-time rehab crews, and we're really, really cranking about at our peak, which was in 05, right before the crash, which really happened in 07, but it started a little earlier than that. And certainly we started feeling it in Ohio, which is where I was at that time. At our peak, we had about 652 properties, about $32 million worth of investment capital on the streets. And we thought we were conservative, thought we had good loan to values. And ultimately, when the crash hit, we lost everything. And I mean, everything. So it was devastating to my family, devastating to a lot of people. And certainly was that bottom moment, that rock bottom moment, and have some stories that I share during that time of I couldn't even afford a Happy Meal for my daughter at one Saturday Saturday morning. I mean, it just was devastating. But it's that driver that kind of gives you that grit to keep going. And until you lose it all, I wonder the lessons, and certainly the tenacity, the thick skin, all of the things that come with adversity that are no fun during the time that you're going through them, certainly had been a catapult to me for where I am today. So a guy named Ron LeGrand, who's really well known in the real estate space, flew me down and said, gave me a job on the spot. I ran his real estate operation for a few years, met some great people like Chris Prefontaine, who introduced us, and did a lot of his high level coaching and a lot of his groups. And so ultimately spun off from Ron and started Little Pink House of America. I mean, how many people, Leo, that have a pink wall in their office? We call it our Pepto-Bismol wall, but I'm actually in our training room right now. This is where we have trainings here live in person in Jacksonville, Florida. And so that's kind of my backstory. I've done a lot of deals, 27 years full time. I've done over 3,000 a date. You stop counting at a certain point, but the volume I had on those first 10 years with my father really was a catapult to a lot of good experiences and a lot of bad ones too. But those are how I've really learned a lot of what we do today.
Scott, really appreciate you sharing that story. And I find it compelling. I think a lot of the audience do too, because very few are the number of entrepreneurs and business owners and real estate investors who everything is constantly upward and it's a perfect trajectory of exponential success. And there's never any pullbacks or adjustments to the market, or even something that brings you to your knees as it did for you. And I know it certainly did for me at the 08-09 recession, where I thought I was a smart real estate investor as well. And remember, flipping a pretty good profit on a $2 million property, and then the market falling out, mortgages, which I was doing at the time too. All those mortgage companies went out of business and demand plummeted. And for about 3 years, it was a really big struggle for me. Homes are in foreclosure, times are tough. And then, of course, to fast forward, however many years it's been, 12, 13 years later, and see where we're at, and we're better put together and with values and principles and a great team here and foundations. And it's so important for people to see. And the sad thing is, Scott, I think there's a lot of people out there who haven't recovered, or maybe they're going through their own time of difficulty. I'm wondering, what were some of the key things you did and your family did to bounce back, and for you to bounce back in the real estate investment community, because it's still historically, and certainly over the last decade, been the very best opportunity. And if you're a smart real estate investor and you follow proven principles, even though certain markets have gone down, the stock market's gone down, there is always a way to generate positive returns with real estate and do it safely. How did you guys bounce back?
Yeah, and that's a great tie down at the end there, because real estate is just that conduit to generational wealth, to cash flow in a way. There are just so many pivot points that are economically amazing in real estate that you just can't get in other industries. And so some of the lessons I learned and really how did we pivot into pink houses? Yeah, I've got to tell you, if I'm being totally honest, I had my doubts. I thought, do I go back into it? I mean, it just devastated my whole family.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, thank God, my wife and I, who we were married, get this, we got married in June of 2005, and our company went out of business in of December of 2005. So we weren't married 6 months. It might have been a little bit into 2006 or 2006. But so marriage went through a real tough test right up front, lose everything.
Very big test.
Oh, man. And she's amazing that she puts up with me still to this day. But we survived. And fortunately, we became closer, which was a kind of a collateral unintended benefit. But so I had questions. Do I go back into real estate? Why would, and of course, my wife wasn't real excited about me getting back into real estate and saying, look what happened. And fortunately, through that time, I had about 18 rental properties that were just mine that I had accumulated over the years at that point, and was able to essentially live off those. I let them go to foreclosure at a certain point. I would collect rent, miss 2 months, make a payment, try to delay it. Eventually, lost them all, but it provided for my life and my wife and I, and we had one child at the time for about 18 months, 20 months, 21 months, something like that. So even even in spite of the damage and the devastation and the apprehension to go back into real estate, it still was providing for us. So there were certainly lessons when it comes to technical things like the loan to value that we want to collateralize with, some of the target properties that we would go after. My father, who grew up really poor, as did my mother, had a very limited mentality because of that poverty, kind of being raised in poverty. So his first several years in his business he did war zone properties. And so I tell people I cut my teeth on the war zones. And it's kind of one of the lessons I remember early on is where you go up to collect the rent, you knock on the door, and then you stand off to the side in case they shoot you through the door, right? Not even kidding. That was one that I learned early on, right? Those are the properties, those are areas you don't want to mess with. And that may sound really elementary to some that may be watching or listening to this, but it was a lesson that I had to learn. There's certain areas we don't want to deal in, and that certainly those war zones are not the ones that we want to be in. So certain technical aspects of how to collateralize areas, what some of the economic indicators are in the markets that we're in. But I think if I had a good foundation of real estate knowledge, and that's continued, most of my lessons I would call life lessons that I just felt, you kind of look at what's your purpose here, and how can you make the most of the time you have, and are you living God's will for your life? And so there was a lot of soul searching at that time, and I'm kind of an open book, so I have no issue sharing some of the hardships I went through, but I think the biggest thing for me is really learning how to dance in the rain, how to have gratitude and be thankful and find joy and peace in the middle of a lot of stuff going on. I guess you have another choice, which is to exit out of this life. That's not how we think. But yes, sometimes you just got to go through it and doing it with grace and doing it with joy in your heart, in spite of a lot of bumpy roads, is probably the biggest takeaway I have. I call it treasure hunting. And it is that in every adversity you face, there are seeds of equal, if not greater opportunity, Napoleon Hill quote. And when you go into a tough situation, or you do go through a tough time, if you can seek those treasures, if you can look for the silver lining, because I've learned that no matter the challenge you face, number one, there's a purpose for it, whether you like it, understand it or not. There's a reason it's happening. How you believe that is obviously up to you, but just as much, if not more, there's always good that can come from it, that will come from it. If you are looking for it early, it can sometimes make that time go a little bit easier, and then you build on that and grow, and you kind of open to where kind of you're guided and the lessons that come into your life. So as much real estate, I really had a lot of personal lessons that taught me I live my life differently because of those tough times.
Yeah, no, me too, Scott. And just amazing value bombs that Scott is dropping for you guys right now in terms of how you pick up the pieces, how you get back on track. Your beliefs matter and give you a foundation. For me, I feel like some of the foundation I was lacking that led to some of my failures was I didn't have well-defined values and principles that I was going to live by. Sometimes I didn't always follow through with my word. I would complain, I would criticize, it was always someone else's fault. And then after that happened, I started really to realize and dig deep that I needed to establish real non-negotiable values and principles. Everything that happened was my fault, good and bad, that happened in my life. There had to be some accountability there. And if you spend all your time, focused on that problem, you'll never get to the solution. So I started to establish these principles to live by. And it sounds like you did too. And if I hadn't have gone through that, even if I had success and been okay through that, I'm sure it would have led to failure down the road eventually, because if you don't have that foundation, and if you don't understand that failure is just part of that learning process, one of the biggest problems I had was I got down too much for that 3-year period. And when you start to understand and you look at the bigger, scheme of things, well, when you're, 85 and on your deathbed, you're not going to think back to that time period very much. You're going to think back, wow, I wish I'd have bounced back further. And so wherever you're at as an entrepreneur, business owner, real estate investor, maybe you're going through a tough time or you went through it and you're still trying to bounce back. You can do it much quicker when you start to establish those values and principles and then start focusing on solutions. For you, I think you did a really key thing there, Scott, that you mentioned. You said after this, you kind of, found a mentor, somebody who had maybe even more experience than you, who was already, building the empire right during or after the recession. How important was it, and how did that work? Kind of finding somebody to mentor under, and how important is it for people to understand the power of a true mentor?
Yeah. So, boy, you gave a couple of really gold nuggets in there. And so let me kind of answer that. I do want to just touch on 2 points, but I think that having a mentor and a guy like Ron LeGrand was so critical for me at that time, because what happens is you inevitably or inherently doubt yourself. You start the bad guy over on this shoulder starts talking a little bit too louder than the good guy, right? And so I know that story that the two wolves, right, where you had the Native American, I think it was a Native American story. There's a grandpa telling his grandson about there's two wolves that vie for your attention, and one is really bad and one is really good. And the grandson says, well, which one do you listen to? And he said, the one that you feed. And it's exactly what you're saying, is that putting your mind too much. And as my dad used to say, you go look at that abyss, but don't stare at it too long, right? So you start thinking about the problem. If you get consumed with focusing on the problem, it magnifies. What you think about expands. As a man thinketh, so shall he be. So if you're always focusing on the problem, that's going to magnify. You're not going to probably solve that. And it is so hard. I'm not armchair quarterbacking over here saying this is a cakewalk. It's really hard when you've got massive problems to try to focus on other things and believe for good and believe for better things happening. So, but that is such a key. And the other thing you said, I just want to notate is owning it. And that's such a tough thing for a lot of people. I won't share some personal things in my mind. I have a family member who just can't seem to own it. And until you take responsibility for where you are in your life, even things that you may not have caused, and that's what people trip over, you can't change. So if you don't own it, you can't change it. And it starts with taking ownership and talk about value. So you can see over my right shoulder, our wall, to your point, we identified what our core values are, how we wanted to do business. And Leo, let me let you in on a secret. I'm a flawed guy and we're not perfect here, but when you live by a set of principles, a set of core values that govern you day in and day out, especially when you have to make decisions that may make somebody unhappy, you can feel good that they're rooted in the right place. And so, but I have an aunt who lived in New York City her whole life, and she's gone to see a therapist or a counselor for a good part of that. And she told me a long time ago, just the value of having someone to talk to that can kind of look at you and give you some advice. And so a mentor isn't a therapist, although there's probably some blur there where you are going to be sharing some personal advice and things of that nature. But when you're going through a tough time and you're having doubts, you're having self-doubt, you're having maybe potential self-confidence or self-esteem issues, of which everybody has. Anybody says otherwise is lying to you. Now, maybe at a certain point you can get past those. But when you're going through those tough times, having someone that is a mentor that has either gone through it and can kind of give you the advice for what to do or how to feel or just some things, and also to see them that they've gone through it and made it to the other end, it just was invaluable. So Ron LeGrand is a guy I'm forever grateful for. Helped me from what I call the lowest spot of my life and put me on the path to where I am today. So there's major gratitude there. But having him in my life at that time I did was a critical component. Having that mentor, it was a difference maker to where I am today. That's just unquestionable.
No question. I love that you got your values right there on the wall, because we do too. When we first opened this office, that was the first thing I had my assistant do, was I want all these printed out on a nice paper and in a nice picture frame, and they're on the wall. And so the first thing people see when they walk in here, hey, these are the values and principles we live by. And it really does seem to help the entire team and company kind of abide by and respect and live by those values. And then when you come across a difficult decision, well, you can kind of look at those values and principles on the wall and, well, this is how we live. This is how we run our business. And that helps to make those decisions a lot easier. So then in the journey, at some point, you went through that mentorship, that coaching, and then it was time to go out on your own again and to relaunch. What was that decision process like? And what was the idea behind it?
Yeah. So, and as you're talking, the memories are flooding back. So, well, I'm a prayer, and I'm not ashamed to share that. So I try to lead my life with prayer, and so it was one of the real first examples where I was saying, God, is this the path I'm supposed to take here? And it was kind of branching out on my own. And quite frankly, Leo, I had a wife, one child, another one on the way when I quit my job, and I had maybe 2 nickels to rub together, but not a lot more than that. And so ended up really branching out and taking a swing at it at a time that would be, by all standards, not the best timing. But there's sometimes where you've got to burn the ships, was really our mantra at that point.
Yes.
Failure is not an option, and it's amazing what can happen when you don't have the choice to get back on the ship and return home. So and then a wife and pregnant wife, excuse me, and a kid, and unfortunately I don't have a rich uncle that can support. So we had to make it happen. And so there was apprehensions, and of course there were doubts after the fact. But I'll never forget. I was probably 4 months in or so, and we were didn't have funds at that point for that next coming payroll, and I had a staff at that point, and I remember just like freaking out and saying, God, I did this, I made this big jump, and I'm here, and I can't cover payroll, and it was one of those lessons early on that of course we covered it, and here we are 9 years later. But that it's not going to be a smooth path no matter what you take, and I think that people sometimes lose sight of that, yours truly included. But you kind of assume that if you're on the right path, it's going to be a smooth sailing, and it's the nature of business, nature of real estate. When you're in a competitive industry, and you are just in an industry you can make a lot of money, you're going to have competition, you're going to have things happen. It's the nature of the beast. And so toughen up, I guess, with some of the other advice early on, is that if you choose the path and you want to go after it, if you're trying to accomplish things in your life, trying to accomplish goals, you're going to have static. You're going to have things that come and get you and try to knock you off your path. And that tenacity and grit and determination to not waver is just really, really key. And so some of those early memories were really difficult, but I suspect you speak the same language. You get to a point when you get through some tough times that you kind of walk a little taller. You may not even realize it, but you just feel like, I've been down this path. It doesn't scare me anymore. And I know we're going to figure it out, because I believe in myself, believe in what we're doing. We're trying to do the right thing. We're showing up every day, working hard. And I just believe that that's rewarded in time as you continue to show up every day and do the right things. And so lots of lessons and certainly doubts from the early days of being in business. But you get to that 5-year mark, and I think the stats are 80% of new businesses small businesses go out of business in the first 5 years. The 20% that survive, 80% of those go out of business the second 5 years. And so, and I don't quote me on those stats. I'm sure I may have skewed that a bit, but they're relatively close. And so we're at our almost 10-year mark, and you get past 5, and I think, the concerns for still, can you make it, go away, but the problems don't. And the bigger you get, the bigger your challenges get. So, and it's part of it. You can take it on the chin and let it, oh my goodness, I can't, or you realize it's part of what you're trying to do. And having that attitude every day of positive and showing up and not complaining, like you said, you complained a lot before, but what you put out there, there's an energy. And so we try to talk positive. In fact, one of the things that we do here, we have what we call our hallway huddles, and we do it about twice a week, and it's in the hallway by design, no sitting down. And we start with what we call positive focus. And it's where we take 5 minutes right at the beginning, and each person goes around and has one thing that they're thankful for. In fact, we encourage it to not be work related, because, when you realize what you're thankful for, you put positive out. It's just a great way to start a meeting. And so anyway, I know you'd mentioned the complaining thing. It's something that everyone is guilty of, and we really get ahead of that.
Yeah. You eliminate that negative energy, and you start focusing. It doesn't mean you don't acknowledge problems. You absolutely acknowledge them, but you immediately focus on, well, where can we find the solutions? And there's 3 kinds of people in this world: people who are good at making problems. Those aren't very helpful. There's a lot of people who are really good at finding problems, but very few are focused in and good at solving those problems. And so if you can be that person of value solving problems, that's going to lead to a lot of benefit and happiness and true value in life. And that's exactly what, Scott, you guys have done at Little Pink housesofamerica.com. It's actually just pinkhousesofamerica.com. And interestingly enough, you have solved a problem which was, something that's probably getting even more attention at this point, and that is the American dream of home ownership. And there are opportunities you've got coast to coast, within your platform and your network. And I think I know a lot of the audience, even as small business owners, they are looking to, get that next home or that first home, and maybe, credit went through some struggles, as sometimes can happen when you're an entrepreneur. So how does it work, with Pink Houses of America? And how is it you have a platform where it looks like you've got opportunities and homeownership opportunities coast to coast?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, and we've got really two businesses. That is one. The other one, which is Pink Affiliates, plural, pinkaffiliates.com.
Oh, very
In fact,
cool.
if I have a special that I hope it's all right to offer, but and I think you have to
Please.
www.pinkaffiliates.com, and it's /free. So I have a free course that it's digital. It's on a really neat platform, easy to digest modules, but it really gives a lot of good value. It gives one of my favorite strategies. We call it our teacher retirement plan. I had a buddy. It's a whole story. I won't take the time, but who's wanted to be a teacher and a coach, and we're in our early 20s, and I put him on this path to buying one house a year for 10 years, $100,000 average. He's literally going to retire a millionaire as a teacher. So I go through that whole plan, but it goes through how we generate leads, what we do, and I would encourage people to take advantage of it. Pink Affiliates, www.pinkaffiliates.com /free. And so that is how it's a training arm, if you will. It's an opportunity to see if there's potential to work with us or not. But what we do here as a whole, and really our backbone, in fact, I could even turn the screen here because I've got right there is our tagline, not good lighting, but it says, we create homeowners. And that's really our mission. And it's something that we're really proud of. And so what we do is we have a few different strategies that we really execute day in and day out. But we work with people who can afford a mortgage, can afford a down payment, but for many reasons, and you being a mortgage guy, at least in your background, so many reasons people can't get a loan today or really at any point. You can have great credit, good DTI, you can have all the things, but you have some quirky that will maybe delay or negate it entirely. So we work with people that need maybe a 12 to 24 month window before they can go get a institutional loan. And so someone that was pre-approved and found a house and negotiated and put an offer and got it accepted and then got denied at their final approval, which kind of happens. That's a great target buyer for us because we know that they're not terribly far out. And so we provide really what we call a bridge or a stepping stone for them. We have a few banks we work with that will loan to them if they follow this blueprint. So we qualify them like a Chase or Wells Fargo. We take them through an underwriting program or process very similar. Understanding they're not going to qualify today, we look for why can't they and what do they need to do and in what time frame can they get a loan. And we require them for their contract with us to work with a credit counseling company, really a mortgage readiness, because it's not always credit, big misnomer. Not everybody has bad credit. There's other criteria that go into qualifying for a loan. And sometimes the credit's good, but other factors are the issue. So they work with this company. And if they follow the blueprint and are successful, these banks will lend them the money. So we're proud of creating homeowners. We believe in that in a lot of ways. We like to make money. So let me be fair, we're for profit, but that is really the mission. And to your point with putting culture and kind of your core values on the wall, I've learned over time that making a profit is a big deal. It's why you get in business. But if there's a purpose behind it, I find employees more so specifically, they want to be a part of a culture. They want to be a part of a company that has values and that is trying to do something in this world. And so as much as it governs who we are and how we try to operate our day to day, I think it also is really a magnet for attracting good people because they want to be a part of something that is trying to do good and has good values. And so for whatever that's worth, I found that as a benefit also. But yeah, that's really the platform of what we do here. We buy and sell. We do lease. We really specialize in creative financing, lease to own. We call it executive lease purchase here because we deal in nice areas and nice families, nice schools. And so many times we're dealing with executive level folks, and it's a misnomer. You can transact lease to own on any level. It doesn't have to be just lower priced properties. And so that's a bit about what we do here and what our mission is.
Outstanding, Scott. And obviously, a lot of people who are business owners or side hustlers, they're always looking for where is the best place to invest time, to invest money. Some have seen the stock market, struggle the last 12 months. Cryptocurrency, there was a lot of passion and money that was kind of poured in there that has dropped significantly. And then real estate has continued to be very consistent. But there's so many different ways to operate in real estate. You've got fix and flip. You've got long-term rentals. You've got Airbnb opportunities. You've got wholesale, lease to own, all these different options. And a lot of people just don't know where to start. And what you don't want to do if you're listening is just try and make it up and figure it out yourself. That's a really bad idea. That's why I had to go through so much pain in 2008 and 2009. So where is somewhere that they can start today? And it sounds like going to pinkaffiliates.com is a good place to start. But for them to go there, what does that roadmap look like where they can, pick, a way to get started in real estate, or maybe they own a rental property or two and they really aren't sure where to go and where they should go with mortgage interest rates having gone higher and some areas, going down, while other areas in Florida around your neighborhood keep going up. Where's a good, how does that journey work at pinkaffiliates.com?
Yeah. By the way, 900 people a day moving to Florida, and they're not staying with me, so they gotta live somewhere. And
they do. Yes, they do.
Well, let me say first that if you're going into real estate and you're wholesaling, you're making a mistake. I tell people that often. In fact, we have a neat little ad that runs that says wholesaling sucks, and it's like these cue card ads, and we've gotten a ton of traffic from it. But most people, or many people getting into real estate think wholesaling is the starting point for good reason, because wholesaling at its core, you're tying up a motivated or distressed seller, and you're assigning that contract for a fee. It doesn't require cash or credit, and there's an appeal factor for that. But Leo, it's so saturated. You have so many people doing it. So many people, you get the thing called a daisy chain. One person ties it up and six trying to market it, right? You've seen that, experienced that. So it's just it can be a real tough business, and it's very much. I won't say any further. It's just not what we recommend. Now, listen, we had a closing today, by the way. Made $6,600, something like that. It was a wholesale deal through our marketing. We send out letters to all the probate attorneys in town and say, hey, if you ever have real estate to sell, we'll give you a fair offer in 24 hours. We treat clients with respect, and got a call. In fact, we've gotten several. It's a great little simple campaign. You send a probate letter to all the probate attorneys. You can find them online. But we got a call, and the house just wasn't special. So we put it on but they were willing to sell for the balance of the mortgage, and there was equity in there. It just wasn't for us. But what do? We teach our people, put under contract. Now you have options. And we just found a buyer, made $6,600, and that's fine. But those help to the bottom line. But I discourage wholesaling for the reasons I said. So as far as dipping your toe in the water, we think there are better ways. As far as the journey with Pink Affiliates is concerned, the one thing that I think is important for me to share is that we believe in what we call the complete investor. Our whole backbone here is creative. We are what we say the best in the world at doing lease to own, anything that is kind of subject to owner finance, anything in that vein of creative, non-traditional real estate. We just feel that there's not many people out there have more experience than we do, and we've certainly had the track record to prove that. But that there's so much that goes in that you can analyze any deal that crosses your desk, and we feel that's such a strength, because whether you're going to fix and flip, whether you want to do Airbnbs, whether you want to do buy, rent, and holds, which I think everybody should buy one house a year for 10 years, figure it out. There's ways to do it. You'll change your life if you can do that. And it's not that hard to do if you know what you're doing, of course, but we there are many ways to go about investing. You got to be careful, because you can try to look at all the shiny objects and get distracted, as you were saying, without help and without chasing things. It's not going to be likely a good result, or you're going to have a lot of school of hard knocks. So, but we train on multiple strategies here, and then we actually find out what the people we working with, what success is for them. Everybody looks at that different. We work with a lot of people that have full-time jobs that love what they do. They just don't love what they make, right? So to add to their income, which can come through fix and flips, big fan of fix and flips, huge fan of anything creative, and everything in between there. We're doing an Airbnb on the water right now. We're developing a property, really excited about that. We have buy, rent, holds. I mean, we got just put 2 houses under contract, one Saturday morning, one Sunday morning to buy. We're going to fix and flip them. So we believe in teaching. This is how you kind of slice and dice the strategies. What do you connect with? What does success look like to you kind of long term? And then what we do is we formulate a blueprint, and that's kind of the model that we execute with them. So it's not a one size fits all here. So we believe in support, unparalleled. We get in the trenches with our people. We call the buyers and sellers. We help with all of the structure. It's just something that we said, how can we separate ourselves? And we try to go above and beyond when it comes to just the involvement in the deals, but also, not just a, one size fits all. And get one step further, Leo, we've always specialized in creative, and we've done really well with it. But when you have one niche that you focus on and the market shifts, you can be stuck holding the bag. So what may be a very high value proposition today in with what you're proposing to whoever you're dealing with, whatever strategy you're trying to execute, if the market shifts, you may lose that value proposition quickly. And if you don't have a pivot point or aren't aware of how to pivot and the other strategies out there, you're going to be pigeonholed and probably not have a real good end result. And so not a big fan of wholesaling, but we wholesale, love creative, love fix and flip, having kind of the gamut, we feel is doing the best service to the people that want to learn it and want to work with us. So that's really our approach. When you start our journey with us, there's stepping stones along the way. You can start with free stuff like I'm giving away this course. It's really, really good, I promise you. And obviously we have levels that you can literally partner with us, become under our umbrella. Little Pink Houses of Tampa, Little Pink Houses of Salt Lake. You can be in your own market. So we do have the ability where you fall under our umbrella. We have trademarks. You license all of our stuff, our branding. Who'd have thought that people would just love this pink thing, right? I'd love to tell you that was all planned, but
great name.
And our name is quirky, and people don't forget it, which has been a lot of fun, and we've had some good results there. So people can be part of that, and they can use that same branding. They can have the logo and all the things. So anyway, well, we just want the people that work with us to succeed in real estate. That's the other part that really drives us, and I think we've got a really, really good training program to ensure that as best possible.
Two things that I would share with you guys, just based off everything Scott is explaining to us here, is number one, when you're looking at someone who can become a mentor, a coach, who's going to help you in real estate or anything, boy, it sure helps if they have experience in good times and bad. And because Scott has both of those, that gives you a very big competitive advantage, because there's a lot of, new successful real estate investors, but boy, they haven't seen the other side of it. And the other side is starting to hit for some of these real estate investors. So having someone with true experience in different types of markets gives you a massive edge. And number two, the fact that Scott understands so many different types of real estate investment strategies, having done this for many decades. Again, because what happens is markets change. And as markets change, if you don't pivot, the way you were investing may not work or may put you at risk. And again, to be able to tap into different strategies like that with experience is going to be key. So this is not a passive podcast. This is an active podcast. So I want to invite you guys to go to pinkaffiliates.com, get started there. If you're in the market and you're looking for, the ability to, enjoy that homeownership dream, then you want to go to pinkhousesofamerica.com. So a lot of different opportunities there. Also, if you do have, properties, I know they are looking to add to that inventory as well, because, and I'd be curious what your thought is on this, Scott. For the last decade, there's been a lot of information from realtor.com and other areas about the fact that inventory for homes on the market still seems to be too low based on demand and population, and we just haven't built enough houses in the last decade. Do you find that still to be the case? As we're going into the second, third quarter here of 2023, is inventory starting to catch up, or is there still just not enough inventory of places for people to live in this country?
Yeah, no, the statistics are exactly what you said. And so I think that inherently there's going to be an overall shortage. But from what we're seeing in the trenches right now is a little bit more of what feels a balanced market. Example, this weekend, we had a house that was listed, I think, at 215, 219, something like that. And we bought it at 182, 183. A year ago, we'd have been competing above market value for that same property. Yeah. So just as a case in point, that shows to me that there's a little bit more of a balance. And I think that, when markets change, when the Fed, it's almost like, at least for us back in August, September, it's like the light switch went off trying to sell properties because rates was a lot of uncertainty. So that has, they've had their reasons for doing so, but that stifled some of the growth by design. So seeing more of a balanced market, I would say for sure, which is good. And again, what's forthcoming, no one knows, but we're seeing good buys out there. We're seeing the ability to make offers. And let me just say two things, if I may. Number one, don't chase deals. Don't chase deals. That's how you've got to make you make your profit to buy. And this is kind of 101, but you make your profit when you buy it. If you don't buy it right, you can have everything else happen perfectly, and you're still not not going to be happy with the result. It all starts with the buy. And so if you see deals and the market's feeling more balanced and you're seeing the opportunity to make some offers, it's okay to stick to your guns. If this is where your numbers are, you're not going to get every deal, and that's okay. It doesn't take a lot to make a real good living in this business. So stick to your guns, run your numbers, and don't chase them. The other thing I want to say is this, and I've shared this a bunch in the past few weeks, but to me, the MLS is an untapped gold mine, and I mean really a few ways. So you've got to weed through some of the deals to find the good ones, but having a good agent that can bring you good deals, that is investor friendly, that knows what to look for. I had this agent who I've known not that long, to be fair. Sunday morning, not Easter, the weekend before, Sunday morning, I'm making coffee and I get a text from her. She said, "Hey, I saw this one," and I'm kind of it's probably 7:30 in the morning, and I was there by 9. And we had it locked up by 2. And one of these my dad taught me a long time ago. He said, "Son, when you get a lead, you get your butt in the car and you go, because you need to be the first in the door. So the minute you don't call back or get in there and you lose that deal and someone else made that money, it's going to make you feel sick to your stomach." And I felt it.
Yes,
I never want to feel it again. So we snuck up on that deal, because I can guarantee you nobody else, or well, in this case, nobody else was up at 7:30 in the morning checking the MLS and was there by 9 o'clock and got it secured. So I think that there's deals out there. You have to look for them, but they're there. A good agent will help. The other thing is this, is there are people that may have little equity in their property, maybe falling behind on payments, which I think we're going to see more of now, that have the property listed. So there are opportunities for subject twos, for any sort of terms where the seller will receive payments, opportunities on the MLS. Now, if you have agents involved, which you do, you have to pay the agent's commissions, and you're going to have to pay the closing costs. If you have a seller that has no equity or seller's behind on payments, you can't expect them to bring a check for closing costs. So if you can pay the agents, pay the commission or the closing costs, there are deal opportunities. We've done 2 subject twos in the past 30 days right from the MLS. They were on the market for more than 90 days, hadn't had big price reductions, which led us to believe that they didn't have a lot of equity. So my agent reached out and just said, "Hey, I've got an investor. He buys houses for cash, also does creative. If the terms made sense, would your seller consider selling on terms or receiving payments?" And it's all consideration, and it's all if the terms are right, but you don't know until it's a very soft script for the agent. But we're finding found 2, we're finding more. We got a little bit of a pipeline where it's a no today, but in 30 days, if they haven't sold, time and circumstance may change that. So just a little tidbit for what we're experiencing right now is finding a good agent that works with investors. Every agent says they work with investors. They don't. Oh, they will, but you have ones that specialize in it, right? And so those are the ones you're looking for. But boy, they'll feed you deals, and ultimately you can also target creative deals right on the MLS. You do have expenses, right? You're going to have to pay some commissions, and the agents aren't going to be real excited if you say, "Well, I'll take it subject to, but I'm not going to pay any commission." Well, you're probably not going to get that deal. So you do have some out of skin out of pocket or skin in the game, but ultimately I think there's some really, really good deals and will continue to be. And as I look back at my 27 years, I mean, one day I bought 6 houses, and one day we bought 32 in 1 month. Now this was in a prior life, as I was mentioning, but most of those deals came from agents on the MLS, and we did all the other marketing, bus benches, billboards, and flyers, and neighborhoods, and we buy houses, and before everybody did, and it was effective. Marketing is a collective thing. It's not just a one thing you do. Maybe for some people, we've all, you got to have the multiple lines, and that's when people find you. But a good agent and deals on the MLS, including creative, exist today. And people may not know that because of how things have been so competitive the past year or two, all the seller, pricing and, going crazy through the roof, but we're finding a lot of deals on the MLS in that capacity.
Well said. Well, Scott has dropped a lot of value bombs for you guys today. Again, make sure you go to pinkaffiliates.com or pinkhousesofamerica.com and get started. Like he said, if you just bought 1 house a year for the next 10 years, you could absolutely change your family's financial future. You would create so many opportunities and really eliminate any stress that money might be causing. But it's going to start by getting a different mindset and living by a different set of values and principles. So working with someone like Scott is going to give you the opportunity to do that. And I highly recommend, you check out pinkaffiliates.com and become a real estate investor wherever you're at, whatever your experience is, because I don't believe there's a better opportunity out there to create financial independence for yourself other than starting a business which you use all the cash flow to buy real estate with that business. And that's kind of my philosophy behind it. But Scott, thank you so much for everything you've shared today and for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Are you looking for more seven-figure secrets, content, or even how you can launch your own recession-proof business? Then check out sevenfigures.com. That's the digit 7, FIGURES.com, where we share more videos, stories, strategies, funding solutions, entrepreneurial education, and even the secret business type that's recession-proof. Thank you for listening, and if you're finding value in our podcast, please give us a 5-star and invite others to join the club.